All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, I guess, whenever you all are watching this. I am Jen, and I am one of the coaches for NDPP. Again, we're here on week 5, and I have Jen and Ashley with me. And last week we talked about building a healthy meal. We looked at what our plate looked like and how to pick out the foods that are going to be helping us reach our goals with this program. So this week, we are reiterating or kind of going back on how to track our food, because that is part of the process too. It's good to know how to build our meals and how to pick those foods, but we also have to have the part about tracking so that we can keep a total of what we're bringing into our body as well. So when we talk about tracking this week, we're also keeping in mind some of the stuff that we talked about before with the healthy eating. So we're going to be looking at things that are low in fat and calories, and also low in sugar. But we're going to be looking for foods that are high in fiber, high in water, high in protein, and the vitamins and minerals that we need. So one of the ways that we can do that is to be looking at food labels and trying to pick out the things that way. That help meet those goals and those things that we want to put into our body. So when we do our tracking, we're going to today talk about what are some of the mechanisms that people use for tracking. We're going to be keying in a little bit too on like maybe some tips and tricks that some of these folks here, Jen and Ashley, have too for when they do their shopping. And then also like how to work through some of those challenges, because tracking does come with challenges as well. So to start off, let's just kind of go back a little bit this past week and see, reflect on how we went with picking our foods this past week in our new way of life, staying at home a lot. How did Jen and Ashley do on building their meals? Anything that went well? Anything that you struggled with?
It was good. We had salads, went and bought, more of that fresh food kind of stuff. We have some of the box things and rice and beans in our pantry that we don't use as often, but every week we do go and kind of get some chicken and salads and some more of that fresh stuff that we need, vegetables and fruits and things like that. So that was good. I don't know, what did I do that was really bad? Cheesecake. I bought cheesecake.
Me too.
It was a cheesecake contest, so 2 slices, 620 some odd calories. I did eat both slices in one sitting. I think Justin probably had like 3 or 4 bites, so maybe I had like 550 calories. Did track it. I did put it in, but that was my little splurge this week, I guess. But when I had salad for dinner, I just figured I could have some cheesecake. So
yeah.
But overall, I would say it was like 70% good. So.
Good. Well, and again, you have to bring in those things that you enjoy every once in a while, as long as you're holding yourself accountable for it, and that because those are the things that if we don't allow ourselves, then eventually we get maybe more off track because we feel like we're what's the word I'm looking for? Not starving ourselves, but like
kind of depriving of like those
depriving. Thank you. The word, it was escaping me, but yes, depriving ourselves. So yeah. Ashley, how about you? How did your week go?
Pretty well. I do have to admit that when I get home from the store is when I like am the worst, because plus the store is just exhausting now and everyone's a little crazy. But now I don't want to cook. Like when I get home from the store, I'm just tired and I don't feel like making anything. So that's not usually the best meal, is like right after going grocery shopping. It's like, well, we have all this food now, but I don't really feel like doing anything with it. So find something you can make. I don't even know. I don't think we really had dinner that night. I did tell Jen I made cookie dough last night and maybe ate a little too much, so my stomach didn't feel good. But I didn't eat all of it, so.
Well, let's just like refresh what is in your cookie dough, though.
Flour, gluten-free flour, vegan butter, brown sugar. It wasn't like a super healthy one.
Oh, you didn't put like chickpeas and stuff in it this time?
No.
Did you make one like that before?
Yeah, I've done that, or I've done like a peanut butter one too. But no, this was like straight up pretty much like normal cookie dough without like the egg.
And she
Again,
sent me a picture of it, and she knows I'm obsessed with cookie dough. So 9 o'clock at night or whenever she sent that to me, I'm like, are you kidding me? And Jeff tried to get me to go on a walk yesterday, and he's like, I'll bring you to Quick Trip and buy you cookie dough. Walk. I did not go for a walk. I said no to cookie dough and the walk out of the deal. So.
I mean, I don't know what would have been more beneficial.
does it weigh out or outweigh?
It does not weigh out at all. The cookie dough is like 800 calories in one serving. So no.
Well, again, having some of those things is important, but good for you for being able to say no to the additional stuff when you knew that, like, okay, this wasn't one of the things that I feel like I needed today. I too had cheesecake. It was my boyfriend's birthday, and that was his request. And I also had a piece and a half in one sitting, mainly because I was like, I just want to get this out of my house. But I did track it as well and hold myself accountable for it. But does anyone do any sort of grilling? Because that's been kind of a fun thing that I've been doing, finding things that I can put on the grill. And it's just kind of a nice, easy way of like a healthier cooking, I guess. Not that if you put sauces and all that kind of stuff on it, but less of the fats and stuff to cook in pans. Anyone do any of that?
We air fry. We don't grill. I don't even own a grill. When I moved, I threw away my little Weber grill we had because it was kind of trashed. So
Yeah.
and since then, we just haven't bought one. But we do love our air fryer, that's for sure. So that thing's like used every single day. Just to figure it out, putting hot dogs in there is like the best thing ever. So, you know.
It's the little things.
Yeah. Whatever gets him excited during quarantine, I'll let him have a hot dog in the air fryer.
Yeah, we don't really have a real one either. We have like an electric one, but this is the first place we've lived where we've had space to have one. So it's kind of a little farther down on the priority list of things to buy at the moment.
No, that totally makes sense. I just happen to have one, so I've been like, it's one of my favorite things to do during these warmer months because I feel like it changes it up too. So it's not just my normal. I eat a lot of chicken, like I've said, and so it feels like it changes it up when I cook it differently. So that's kind of been one of my go-tos lately is grilling stuff, chicken, veggies, fish. We grilled fish, so that was really good.
Yeah.
So kind of my kids were like, "Ooh, I think I like this better."
We like chicken now because you made it on the grill.
Yes. My son, who usually does not like fish, was like, but I kind of still make him eat it. He's like, I like it better when it's grilled. I was like, all right, note to self.
We're going to grill it every time.
Even in the winter.
Wow, I can. Yep. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad to hear that things are going fairly well and with picking the things during this time. So we're going to move a little bit into the tracking piece. And so at this point in the program, I know people are perhaps farther along, and that's okay, but we're at week 5, we're talking about tracking and just getting into it, because getting into tracking can be a hard habit to get into because most of us it isn't something that we've necessarily naturally always done. And so we wanted to start with some basic things, including what are you eating and when. And so starting to look at patterns throughout the week of like, what are the different things that I am putting into my body, so you can get an idea of where might there need to be some adjustments. And then also when. Time of day can be really important for our eating habits and our eating processes, and it can really have an impact on how we feel throughout the day and impact our other food choices as well. So do you all have any thoughts about different times of eating that work best, or that times of day that you try to avoid eating?
Not necessarily. Now being at home, I'm on a little different schedule for eating. I know we've mentioned this before, like my lack of eating when I was at the gym. And so like my mornings, I probably wouldn't even eat anything but maybe a protein bar until like 2. And then I'd come home and I'd have like a pretty big meal at 2. and then I would kind of snack and then have a smaller dinner. But now being at home, I find that I graze more throughout the day. So like every 2 hours, I'm eating probably something, but it's relatively small. So I don't know. I know I've heard those like kind of contradictory, like don't eat before you go to bed. But then other times too, I still eat and I feel fine. I don't, it's a super negative thing. Sometimes it helps me sleep. Sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I'm not as like starving. So I don't like binge eat a bunch of stuff. So I think with my schedule, I was eating later at night. I kind of just, I don't know. I don't really follow very many of those guidelines. I kind of, you know, I don't know. And now it's kind of hard because like I'm never really hungry. Let's be honest. I'm going to the fridge because I'm bored. Myself, like I should probably eat something because there's nothing else to do. At night, and I eat a lot at night like that. But I don't think there's a specific time I stay away from, or I'm, now in the last like month, I was eating breakfast like all the time in the first little bit of our quarantine, which I never ate breakfast before. And so now I've been kind of cutting that out again because once I get back to work, I won't be in that routine again anyway. So I'm trying to eat a little bit later like I normally was, and that seems to work better for me. So getting up and just having coffee in the morning, which again is horrible. Like do as I, like as we're talking about like trainers and coaches, like do as I say, don't as I do, because I'm kind of like that. Probably not the best rules to follow, but I just had my coffee and like I think I had my breakfast / lunch at like 11:30, 12. So, and it was small, but yeah.
But it works for you, right?
Yeah.
So, Ashley, how about you? Are there things that you either do or avoid in terms of like timing of your eating?
One, before I was pregnant, and two, when we were actually at the gym, I kind of like Jen, like I didn't really have much of a breakfast just because it was hard to like go teach a class on like a full stomach, or like just not wanting to get up even earlier just to, have a little something. But that kind of changed like as I was like getting more nauseous and things, like waking up, I kind of found that I had to eat before going to the gym because otherwise I would feel like more sick while I was working out. So that was kind of for me a little bit of a change. But also knowing that like I can't eat certain things, before working out too, and kind of figuring that out. And now that we like been home, I'll usually have like kind of a normalish breakfast just because we're not typically working out until like 10. So if I'm getting up at 7 or whatever, I feel like I have enough time to actually sit there and digest and not feel gross when we're doing our workouts. But then more recently now I've noticed like at night I've been trying to limit, which in general I think I should, because I know that I'm kind of like Jen said, more of a nighttime grazer, snacker type of person, but also now that I'm in my 3rd trimester, my like heartburn and things like that have been getting pretty bad at night. So I can't sleep sitting up. So if I have anything like after 8, it needs to be like very non-acidic. Otherwise I'm, up in the middle of the night for an hour or hour and a half. So that's been a little bit of a change. But in general, I think for me, like nighttime eating is something I try to limit or be a little bit more, cautious around, because I do know that's when I tend to not eat because I am hungry or because I need to.
Well, and I'm not going to sit here and tell people that they should or shouldn't, because it's really a personal thing. Like some people don't have a problem eating before, bed if they're truly hungry. And some people do, I know other people who they're like, if I eat before I go to bed, I don't sleep well, or I wake up and I'm starving. And so the great part about looking at what we're eating and when we're eating it is that we can start to see some of those patterns in ourselves, and how that food, and not only the food choice, but also the time that we're eating, is having an impact on us. So you both talked about things like, I kind of had to look at when I was teaching classes and like when I could eat, according to that, so that I was able to do the things that I needed to for that. And then, you both also talked about like being able to look at like the nighttime eating and saying, is this something that I truly need, and how does it impact my body? Or is it that I'm finding that I'm eating more at night because I'm bored? And so again, that tracking can help us identify some of those patterns that we're doing and help us adjust our eating habits to help us better meet our goals with that. So do you guys have anything to add on that, or does that make sense to you all?
Yeah.
So I know that you both have done some tracking with food. You know, some of you, I know, Jen, you've been doing it for quite a while. Ashley, I'm not 100% sure on what you all been doing, but what do you think was the hardest part about getting into tracking? Like, what were some of the challenges, or what continue to be some of the challenges with tracking?
Just consistency, like keeping it up. I mean, even missing like one day or one meal that you don't write down right afterwards just gets to be like a snowball effect. Even if you've been doing it for, you know, they say 21 days to build a habit, even once you miss, I mean, I find that like I don't necessarily log I shouldn't say like every time I eat, I don't just whip out my notebook and write it down. I probably pull it out like 3 or 4 times a day, and like I might need to log like 3 things in there at one time, or at the end of the night I might be like, oh, I had this, this, and this, and I kind of total up my calories when we get to that point, but and kind of see what my you know, ratio was to what my goal was. But I feel like if you just take a whole day and you're like, I'll just get back to it tomorrow, it's so easy to not go back that next day. And I too think like writing things down, like if you don't write down the cheesecake or you don't write down the cookie dough, it's like, oh, it didn't happen. I didn't eat it. It's actually on a piece of paper. Yeah, so not the case at all. So, but that also goes like if you're doing activity, like if you forget your tracker one day, we're so obsessed with our Fitbits and our Apple Watches, I'm not picking on it, but all that kind of stuff. We're like, I don't have it on, I didn't get my steps in. That's so not the case. You still got your steps in, you just don't have something telling you. So on the flip side of that, if you still eat something and don't write it down, I mean, it's still so consistency is big. I mean, I go on spurts of like doing super, super good, and I could miss a day, and then it's like day 2, day 3, and I'm like, oh, I need to get back to it, and then get back up on the bandwagon. So just finding the time to do it, and not being too busy to do it, because it literally takes no time at all on the grand scheme of things.
So you talked a little bit about, you know, obviously like making the time to do that. Are there other things that you do to overcome the challenge of the tracking? Like, how do you address, you know, and maybe you ate something and you don't want to track it. Like, what do you do to make sure that you do track it?
I try not to have that emotional connection with the food that's in my mouth or that I go to. To me, it's just like a task at hand of like marking something off my to-do list. I ate this, this, and this. And at the end of the day, I'll total things up. And if I realize like, well, I shouldn't have ate that, then in my journal, I kind of have a little like reflection point of like what I did good today, what I could do better on the next day. And I don't beat myself up about it. It's one day. The next day is a brand new day, and you can start over with a new goal. So, I think that helps me. It is what it is. It's just more being aware of it, which helps me. But again, I used to be in that zone of like beating myself up over eating it, or being like, I don't want to write this down. I kind of just got over that after a point of being like, this is a lifetime goal, not today's goal or until I reach my goal weight. Like, this is my routine for the rest of my life, and I have tomorrow and the next day. But I'm also not advocating being a procrastinator. So make sure you log your food, but just don't beat yourself up about the results.
Right. One of the things that I, have talked to about, people in my groups before, just in general, is that when we don't track things, it doesn't hurt anybody but ourselves. Because nobody else is going to care if I mark down that I ate that cheesecake. What it does matter to me is that eventually I need to look at, like, am I doing the things that are putting me further towards my goal or further away from my goal? And so by me not writing down, things that maybe I, didn't need as much of, or adding on extra minutes for activity or whatever it is, those are the things that ultimately come back to me. It doesn't matter to anybody else. And so trying to keep, that's something that I try to encourage people to think about too as they're doing some of this tracking, is that the more honest they are with themselves, the better they're gonna do and the more results they're gonna see.
Yeah.
Ashley, how about you? Do you have any things with tracking that have been helpful? Or how much? I guess I don't really actually know how much tracking you have been doing, so I don't want to make the assumption that you have been.
Yeah, I'm not a super huge like tracker in terms of like everything that I eat. I try to do it more on like the front side of like planning what I'm going to eat, and more along those lines of like knowing that like I have these things, or like I won't buy this at the store, so that there's no option to have that kind of a thing, or like I don't know, just kind of having those set things where it's like, these are the meals I have to choose from. Like this is what I plan for the week, and that's kind of, what I have to choose from, instead of being like, oh, I can just go into the cupboard and look and be like, oh, that sounds good, which still happens. But I think for me, trying to like be on that preventative side of like, okay, I'm not gonna, put that in the cart, or I'm going to have these planned out so I'm not, stressed about when I get home from work that there's not going to be any healthier options. But I have noticed, like for me, kind of what Jen talked about a little bit, when I do track, I do find myself that if I track throughout the day, I feel the need to like justify what I eat or what I don't eat. And so it's like, okay, if I'm not going to work out today, then I can't have this. Or, oh, if I ate this, then I'm going to do extra of X, Y, or Z, which for me hasn't been, the healthiest relationship with that. So I think that's part of why I don't track a lot of the specifics, I would say. But that's just kind of been my own personal experience with it. So
well, and there's a lot of mind games that can go along with some of this, and Jen, I like your idea of just like trying as much as possible to take the emotion out of it. Like, I'm doing this to sustain my body, and what do I need to sustain my body, and then process it later. Like why did I maybe overindulge in something, and maybe it was I had planned on that, and that's okay, or this was going on, and now I know that next time I get stressed or these types of things come up, maybe I don't go to food, that kind of thing. And so trying to disconnect a little bit can, I think I like that idea of that, so that we don't get into a unhealthy, because you're right, we can go the opposite direction and be so stringent. That's something that I've also talked with people about is, you have to still, live, live life, and allow yourself some flexibilities, because the more that we get so attached to some of these things, the less likely we are to sustain them if we don't see them as a lifestyle change. So if we start to see this as a diet that's going to end, it will end. So yeah, great points. I know one of the things that I have done as well, because of busy, just to throw in some other things, I've done both tracking at the end of the day, and I've also actually done some like pre-tracking, because I do meal planning, and so I know that like here's going to be my meal for the day, and I'll put it in the morning, and then I'll go back and add stuff, like if I do add something in, but it also in some ways helps me because I do it right away, so I remember to do it. It does make me question. I don't want to say that it rules my life in terms of like, oh, I didn't write it, so I can't have anything. But it does make me question, is this something that I really need, or am I just eating because I'm bored, or, those types of things. And so that's some ways that I've kind of gotten around some of the tracking stuff too, is to try a couple different things. And ultimately we have to figure out what works best for us. So, in terms of tracking, I know, Jen, you talked about like pen, pencil, paper, whatever that is, notebook. But each of you also have clients too that I'm sure that you work with, like through your personal training, and have talked to a number of people at the Y, I'm sure. But what are some of the other ways that you have heard of people tracking, or know of people tracking some of their food intake?
Well, there's so many apps out there now. I think if you have a Fitbit, it automatically has a place to track in there, which I feel like people are drawn to just because it automatically logs your activity as well and your steps, and kind of gives you that your calorie intake of what's required according to the numbers that you put in. Again, according to the numbers that you put in. Obviously, like when we set up these apps, it asks you like what your weight is, what your height is. Everything is just as accurate as the information you put into it. So be honest about your weight, be honest about all those things too, so you get that right calorie, count that you're supposed to be getting to. But I think just like, I mean, Fitbit, I don't know, like, does an Apple Watch have like does it have an app to it as well?
Yeah, well, actually, I don't know. It has an app that will like take the activity from it, but I don't, I guess, know if there's a food logging one that comes.
Yeah. You can sync so much stuff. I mean, I know that there's My Fitness Pal. I know My Net Diary was one that I actually liked doing when I was doing it online. I prefer the pen and paper, but I do like the apps where you can scan the actual food. I think that's pretty convenient. But again, if you're making everything from scratch, pretty much like Ashley does, I mean, she cooks a lot, so you're going to have to factor that. You're going to be scanning a lot.
So annoying. That's like my least favorite part of like tracking things is like, okay, well, I put like this amount of this and this amount of this, and if it has like 20 ingredients, you're sitting there on your phone trying to get like find the ingredient first if it's not in a package, and then you're like, okay, this is the amount. And then one of the things I did like when I used My Fitness Pal, I think it was a little bit in college, and the nice thing was that you could like save a recipe. So say it's something you make pretty often, you could put in all those ingredients, and then the next time you had it, you didn't have to do that. You could just click on the recipe, which was nice, but it was a little tedious to put the recipes in the first place.
And that is one of the things that, I've heard from people too, is that like, especially when and I'm glad you guys brought this up about the recipes, because it's very easy to be like, okay, I'm going to have this, canister of yogurt, and then, look at it and go, oh, okay, here's what I ate, and put it in. It's a whole different thing if you're like, I made this soup and it has these 15 different things in it, and now I need to be able to calculate that. So it is time consuming, and you might have to plan a little bit for it, but there are a lot of apps, and I'm glad you brought this up, Ashley, that do allow for you to put it in once, and if it's a go-to thing, then you can pull it back up. My app that I use, and I am in Weight Watchers, and so I use a Weight Watchers app, but that's what I'm able to do. And then I'm also able to pull up like my frequently used foods, and so it takes me seconds to put it in, which is really nice. And so if you do go the app route versus a handwritten route, just do a little bit of digging and find out what's going to work best for you on that. Are there other like tips and tricks or anything that you can think of that would be useful to share with people, things that you've found that you like doing, or things that you found that you struggle with, that we could give advice to people on as we wrap up this week's topic?
I think the one thing that works the best for me, which is probably really funny, but my whole life I've been like obsessed with like stationery and little notebooks and pens and all that stuff. Like if you'd ask my mom, like I was always going to Office Max and buying like the next cool colored gel pen. I'm 33, so if you're around my age, you know what I'm talking about.
Hey, I still use gel pens. Come on.
And those cool pens you could write on like black paper. And anyway, so I was obsessed with all that kind of stuff, and I still am drawn to that now. So that's why I prefer like pen and paper, because I feel like if I buy colored pens that are really fun, it makes me want to use them. It makes me want to write. It makes me want to journal. And so that seems to be what really works for me. Or if you're not into colored pens, like you want to do like a really nice black felt tip pen that looks pretty when you write, and you can, I don't know, I could go on and on. That's what draws me to doing that. I love my pens, and like, it sounds stupid, but practicing like my handwriting in the process, like that's really kind of something that I want to be able to write nice, and like I try to focus on that. So that's what helps me stay motivated, because I'm drawn to do that. I want to do that. I want to use my pens and make it really pretty and like kind of doodle in there and make little notes to myself to stay motivated. And that it really seems to work best. I think it's quicker too for me because I can just flip open my notebook and I can write this, this, and this, and it's super fast. I know that you say within seconds you can get on your app and do that, but sometimes it's not that fast. And I feel like it's 10 minutes for me to get something together, and then I push the wrong button on my app, and then I have to do it all over again. So if I mess up in my notebook, I can just scribble it out with a really pretty pink pen and I can go and do it again. Like it's like seconds.
Jen
and I
doesn't like technology.
No, I don't like technology. And I like looking back. I like to flip to the day, and I know you can do that on the apps too, but I like going back to the day before and seeing what I wrote in the margins and like making little notes by recipes that I've made. And I almost make it like a scrapbook kind of idea and like more of a diary and journal. And it makes it more fun for me. So as it works for me. If you love technology, keep scanning those barcodes. Ashley's way more techie than I am, so I'll be interested to see like how she stays. Draws you. What are your tips and tricks?
Well, I feel like it's what's convenient for you and what you're going to do over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Because if someone, I don't know, doesn't find the enjoyment that you do, Jen, and like having those things that kind of make you want to go write it down, they might just avoid it altogether. But if they're like, oh, I can just scan this, and for some reason that makes them seem like it's, faster and more convenient for them, and they're going to, maybe be more consistent with that, I think whatever approach you can, maintain over the long haul is what is going to give you the best results, whether that's an app or pen and paper, or I don't know what other options there are, but
That sounds about right.
Right. You got two choices.
And there's two things that I really like that you brought up. I think, absolutely, you're both right that you have to find what works for you. Because if you don't find something that you find convenient or meaningful, again, it's not something that you're going to stick with, or it's going to be tedious. And you might as well find some level of enjoyment, whether it's the satisfaction of the fun pens or the satisfaction of being able to scan an item and be like, I'm done. Whatever those things are, find the enjoyment in it. And then the other part that I really liked that I think, Jen, you kind of talked about this is this idea of mindfulness. You didn't use the word per se, but, as you're writing stuff down, it can be an opportunity to build in some of that mindfulness into your day. Just a couple minutes of like kind of quiet time where you're sitting there and you're reflecting on it. It doesn't just have to be about your food, but like, how did your day go and what was impacting your day? And what do you notice about, how your day was going and your food interaction or your activity interaction? And so it can be, we all need a little bit of mindfulness. We need those moments to slow down. And so this can be a really great avenue for that. And you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. Because you're getting the tracking in, but you're also taking that moment of reflection and quiet and focusing in on yourself. So great tips. Well, that brings us to the end of this week. Again, we're going to be posting this on the website. We hope that you're going to be sharing things with us. Talk with us about what are your challenges? What ways do you like to track? Still feel free to share recipes, even if we're not talking about cooking, or share ideas for your favorite activity that you've done the past week. This is really your forum as a person participating in NDPP to interact with some of the people and also get ideas from other folks. So we hope that you will engage with us, and we will see you next week.